Welcome to Prison Talk with Jamie Meade.
And Emma Charleston.
I would like to welcome you to our first official podcast episode. This episode will be covering mandatory minimums in the United States and specifically Michigan. This is actually as the first that we know of and only podcast that has a co-host that is incarcerated. So we welcome you to listen, welcome your feedback, and sometimes we will even invite guests to appear with us.
And some people have actually, surprisingly enough, said they would like to do that.
Yes, and our first topic we chose was mandatory minimums because I am serving a mandatory minimum sentence for first-degree felony murder. And my mandatory minimum sentence is life without the possibility of parole. So the 3 points that we want to cover on this episode is defining and giving the purpose of mandatory minimums statutorily, and life without the possibility of parole. And 3 is giving back the discretion to the judges to sentence someone according to their culpability. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, but I'll be interrupting you and asking you questions, so be ready for that.
Yes. Well, to give our listeners a brief description or definition and purpose of mandatory minimums take away all discretion from the judge who is trying an offender or someone accused of a crime that is convicted and facing a potential sentence in prison. Mandatory minimums are passed by the legislature, elected politicians, either in a state House of Representatives or a state Senate. And on the federal level, it is passed by Congress, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate. And these prescribe a set number of years that a person must serve before they can be released.
Can I ask why are mandatory minimums a thing? Why were they brought about? Why was all this required? If they were made into law and stuff, there must be a reason.
They were meant to be more punitive than other measures. Before they changed, I'll give you on a federal level an example. Before they changed the law between the disproportionate sentencing of crack and cocaine, crack was given large amounts of time, and if you get caught with so much, it was a mandatory sentence. And on the state level, felony firearm. If if someone commits a crime with a firearm, it's a mandatory 2 years. The judge has no discretion to be outside that scope of sentence. Yeah. If that felon gets caught with a second time with a firearm, it goes to 5 years. A third time, 10 years. So in Michigan, we had at one time what's called the 650 law for cocaine.
Yeah.
If you got caught with more than 650 grams, which is close to a half of a kilo, you would be given a life without the possibility of parole sentence.
Why?
That's the harshness of the war on drugs.
So it's the war
that was started.
War on drugs. So it's a war on drugs thing. It's not that it's any more dangerous than like murdering somebody.
No.
Yeah.
No, and that's what mandatory minimum sentences. As I said, it takes away all discretion from a judge to sentence, and the purpose of it is to impose a harsh sentence where the offender does not even, they do not get, if a state has good time where they get days off for good behavior, or if they get time off for programs that is sentenced to a mandatory minimum will not get time off his sentence. He has to serve that number before he's eligible for release.
All right. So I want to say one thing that possibly you might not agree with, or anyone else. But I can understand why you were talking about the felony firearms. So if you're caught doing a crime with a gun, it's 2 years. And then if you're doing another crime and you get caught again with a gun, it's 5 years, did you say? And then,
yes, it's 5 years.
And then again, it's 10 years. Well, I kind of think, well, shit, mate, can't you figure that out? Like, I can sort of understand. Yeah. I can sort of understand why that's a thing. I can understand that. I can't understand that logically.
I mean, for the offender, it is irrational. But when you apply it to like drugs, or you apply it to felony
drugs.
Murder,
I'm talking about
as that we were going to speak about as the second point. On life without the possibility of parole. A life without the possibility of parole sentence is a mandatory sentence that the judge has no discretion but to give the offender that's convicted. As in my case, I was convicted of aiding and abetting, being accessory to someone else who had a firearm, who killed someone during a robbery. And the judge, admitted, yes, I knew about the robbery. The judge, but at the sentencing phase, she said, I have no discretion to go outside this sentence that's mandatory by statute that I give you life without the possibility of parole. What's so unusual in my situation, the person that committed the crime only received 12 years for committing the crime. So I was giving the mandatory minimum sentence of life without the possibility of parole 30 years ago. And now the judge that tried me and sentenced me, has been writing letters to the governor, to the Michigan Parole Board, asking for my release because she said she would have never gave me that life without parole sentence at that time that she sentenced me if she had the discretion. She said my culpability during the murder did not rise to the level of deserving life without the possibility of parole. She said she would have only gave me the same sentence that my co-defendant who did the crime. So that's where the discretion comes in. Because not every offender, when you have a crime with multiple offenders, not every offender plays the same role. A planned crime, it don't matter what crime, and we can look at it logically, which some people can't because it's crime. But even criminals, they plan things. If you plan to steal a car, you don't plan that there's a cat up in the wheel well sleeping. Should you be charged with cruel treatment of animals because when you stole the car and drove off, you ran over the cat?
Well, I think.
And so
I was going to say, I think in the case of life without parole being a mandatory minimum, I struggle with that when you're an accessory. I do struggle with that, unless everyone gets together and like, right, let's go there and it's all a planned, agreed upon thing, different story. But if you're there and you're not the one that's done something, I just struggle with that. I don't see, that doesn't make sense to me. Lots of time, sure, because you're responsible in the loss of a life in some way, but, well, in your case specifically, especially, I think if the principal had have got life without parole, you probably wouldn't bat an eyelid at it. It would be very easy, in your case, to say, oh, well, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. But I think because he got out 12 years, he got 12 years. But why did he get 12 years and you got life without parole? Or is that a separate thing that we're getting off topic?
Well, it's a separate topic, but most offenders, when you have a multiple offender crime, they're separated in trial. And his jury in his trial returned a verdict 1 week prior to my jury returning the verdict. And they found him guilty of a lesser included offense. And so
So they didn't even find him guilty of the crime.
Yeah, it was just his jury did not believe he was as guilty as the prosecutor was claiming.
Yeah. Okay.
In their argument.
Yeah.
And that's again, that's where the stripping the discretion from a judge during the sentencing phase, who sit there and listen to all the evidence.
Yes.
Is where mandatory minimums find a problem. That's where the problem lies with the mandatory minimum, because the judge who sat there and listened and knows all the evidence should have a say-so.
Yes.
Just in case something, happens.
Well, you would think. I would have thought a judge would have. I would have thought a judge would have, to be honest.
And that's, that should be. Some states, yes, but in Michigan, absolutely not. And that's where the problem lies with mandatory minimums, because not everyone has the same culpability during a crime. If you plan to do a robbery and another individual in another room struggles with the victim and, punches them and knocks them down and they die, now everybody, even the person sitting in the car, is liable equally for something that was not planned, was not even thought about.
Yes.
Or discussed. So, and that's where the mandatory minimum becomes a problem. Because the judge cannot say, you know what, he wasn't that responsible.
No.
Let's give him less time. She has to give him the maximum sentence.
Yeah.
The mandatory that statutorily legislators have passed, and says the judge don't have no discretion on this specific crime.
Well, I read somewhere that in some cases when judges do have discretion, they can sometimes actually, they actually tend towards a higher sentence. So it's not like judges having discretion are just going to be like, oh, let's let everybody off. The only reason why people are sentenced to things is because they have to, sort of thing.
Yeah, and they can actually sentence the...
You have 1 minute remaining.
They can actually sentence the more culpable person to more time.
And when you say culpable, you mean more guilty. Is that right? Or with the person with more guilt?
More liable for their actions.
Yeah, all right. Just to be clear.
This phone call is, since we're limited to 15 minutes, we will continue this...
in the next phone call.
On a episode number 2 in 15 minutes.
Woohoo! I don't know how to end this, so we're just going to end this one by saying we don't know how to end it. We'll figure that out by the next episode, maybe.
Yes. And we'll start right as soon as I call back.
Alrighty. So I'm going to end it with bye.
All right.